guys, welcome back to a Frame Day workout with Helen Chen. So, so this is kind of different. I know in the last video I mentioned hating like nature and painting nature, and so I'm very conscious of that fact, and I felt like I needed to, do one. And I have a reason for that that I'll get into. But first off, this is a screenshot from Lord of the Rings. I believe Two Towers, or maybe it's Fellowship. I'm not really sure. I have to look again. But I wanted to choose Lord of the Ring because, of course, it's such a prevalent piece of media. Everybody's seen it, and I decided to choose this example of a bit of a landscape because I actually really like the way it's composed and the colors. So as you can see, I'm starting off with the sky color. And one of the things you'll see me do a lot in this video in particular is move my color box around. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to get that preview window where the color shows up in the window as close to the color I'm trying to match as possible. And I like to kind of do that and take a look at both of them and then like slide my picker around and like on the in the vicinity of that color and just, try and really get the right one. So like, for this one, for example, I'm really trying to get that like purple of the mountains. So I moved my, my little box there a little bit closer and I'm like, oh, it looks purple, but it's not. It's actually still in the blue family. And so I'm able to kind of more accurately judge. And that's why I'm moving my color box around so much. Partly it's also because I'm just a little bit hesitant to do this image. I'm just not very used to doing landscapes. It's not my favorite thing. So I'm approaching it a little bit more cautiously. So the reason I'm not a huge fan of doing like nature and things like that is because it's really hard, and two, sometimes I kind of feel like a lot of times they're used as like, of course they serve the same function as any other set, but for a lot of it, especially in Lord of the Rings, for these like wide mountainy shots, it's more of a vibe check or something. It's more of a, let me show you where the world is and give you a feeling of how big it is and things like that versus, something as specific as like, I don't know, like one of the rooms from King's Speech. That's just it's like a very specific room with very specific furniture. Not to say that it's any less valid. It's just for me personally a little bit less interesting. Personally, and I know that there are people who love landscapes and live by them, and that's totally fine. And I love that Nathan Fowles has a workout course that deals a lot with like different lighting conditions and nature and all this stuff. That's like super helpful and everybody I feel like would benefit from it. I just personally am not a huge fan. I know that, I get this question a lot if I go plein air painting, and the short answer is no. There's a couple of reasons though that aren't just I hate it. The main one is that I just don't find landscapes that interesting. Like I just don't like it that much. But another reason I don't really like to do landscapes from life, especially if it's like middle of the day or like especially if there's not that much like lighting variation, is that I find that they're just it's more about, at that point it's more about like honing technique and a shorthand for getting like the mountain shapes or the forest shapes, more about like controlling detail and where to put. Because there is so much detail in nature, it's more of an exercise of control and decision making, and it's really hard. But it's not so much one in storytelling. And the only reason I say that is because when you go outside and you paint from plein air, you're learning a lot of things about art, about technique, about things like that, but you're not learning that much about storytelling. And it's because a lot of the landscapes and a lot of the worlds we see in these movies, while they are of nature, like this one, they're kind of editorialized, and that's done through color, through atmosphere, through composition. And that's why if I were to do any landscape studies, I would actually do it off of films rather than real life, because it's like it's adding that extra little bit of storytelling choice making that I really enjoy from this industry into landscapes, and it makes it like more interesting for me. So that's why I kind of decided to choose this shot. It's on the surface, first of all, very simple, but it's also really sophisticated in the way that they've treated how it looks and how it's been shot. Like it's really celebrating kind of the flat ground, and it's like they're very specific with where the characters are in comparison to the horizon line, and it's just a very graphic shot. And I wonder, and I also love the choice of not having any foreground elements or not having any trees really whipping by. It just makes it feel really like this vast, never-ending grassy plain with this mountain range behind. And so I feel like there's some storytelling here, just some feelings that the filmmakers are wanting you to feel about this place that tells a story outside of it just being, you know, a mountain range. I guess all of that is to justify kind of to myself why I never do landscapes. And I don't ever want to encourage somebody not to do it, because you can learn so much from that practice. It's just not ever been something that I personally have really loved. So because of that, you can kind of tell I'm also not very how do I put this? I'm not very into like getting very specific kind of like these fancy brush strokes in my landscapes. Some artists are really good at it, and they have all of these beautiful kind of like brush strokes, and they really make it look like fine art. I'm not one of those, so I'm just using the same brush we always use, and I'm just trying to pick out some interesting kind of shapes within the mountain range to show kind of the like undulation or the kind of like peaks and things like that through it, just enough to give it that feeling of being mountainy, and then we're gonna move on. I mean, I'm actually going to use a few more different brushes in this image than I would normally. Usually we've only just been using the one, but I'm going to introduce some other brushes that have a little bit more texture to them, especially to get like a fast, like a speckly look to the snow caps and how they kind of like recede down the side of the mountain, just to give it that scale. And it's just really hard to do with that really soft brush. So this is the only time you'll see me kind of like switch between like so many different brushes in some of these studies. And it's purely to get that texture to come through on the like, you know, the plains of the mountain and then the sides of the snow and stuff like that. Always paint, especially things that are far back or things that are really subtle. I paint it with just a tad more contrast and punch than intended, just because I know that that way, if I go too far, it's easier to dial back than not far enough and have to add in layer and layer. So now I'm doing kind of an atmospheric layer of that sky color over the mountains, just to lessen it, set it to lighten so I can get it to read about the right amount, and lessen the contrast between, the mountains and the mountainsides. And kind of lay in the horizon line. I really love how it's kind of like lined with these little like shrubs and trees. It really breaks it up and adds interest and adds the speed. And it things like that, like there doesn't have to be a lot of that, but just having things kind of moving, it really gives you the sense that like, the camera's moving and things are going and stuff like that. I think I am going to give this whole image a sense of that as well. Add some texture to the foreground and then motion blurring it a little bit so that like just side to side, just so you get that kind of feeling. But again, this shot is more about it's one of those classic kind of traveling shots, and it's more for you to take in the world than for others, and that's totally fine. Every movie needs shots like these. Being super precious about getting each shrub in exactly the right place. It's not really that important for this image. I just feel like I need enough to break up so that it feels like there's a little bit of scale there, like that things are receding and grouping up, and stuff, to kind of like stick out and to break up all of that empty space that the ground plane is making. And so, like I was mentioning before, I'm actually gonna start using a brush with a little bit more texture because the ground has this natural texture to it. It almost reads kind of like waves to me, almost like, and I love stuff like that. I don't know if it's on purpose. I don't think it is, but it's just me going through and adding some of this texture because later when we do, motion blur it a little bit to give it the look of like speed lines, almost the movement of the camera, that there's something there to blur and give that effect. And I think that like relying on a brush with a little bit more smaller scale, sharp texture, like the one that I'm using, is always helpful for things that are in nature because it is so like detail dense. Like if you think of a forest or grass, there's just so many like little shapes that to use something that has a little bit more texture to like hint at that detail is much better than going in and trying to like paint every single blade of grass, even though some people might enjoy that. I do not, so I'm going to use a really brushy brush. I'm going to start putting in the characters. But again, it's very hard to tell what's going on. So I decided to just highlight two of the horses, even though I know there are more there. And as long as their shape kind of stands out and they read as horses, especially the white horse and then that dark horse in the back, then in between matters less. So it's kind of like tricking the viewer, right? Like you paint out one thing super specifically and you can see that it's like for example grapes or something, and then you just see some blobs in the back and you just assume that there are more grapes. So I'm going to try and do that so that I don't have to go in and like really try and figure out exactly what color horse the third guy is on, when really you only need to read the silhouettes of maybe two to get the idea. Oh, here I am just kind of filling in whatever is in the middle there. I don't know what horse shape is happening there, but I'm just gonna fill in something and hope that with that third horse and that first white one, you really get the idea. Oh, I'm just adding just the barest bit of texture. I mentioned earlier that it feels like waves, and I've used this on waves too, this kind of thing where I just kind of like fake draw in like these evenly spaced kind of shapes, like what's happening in the foreground. And then I'll take the whole image and then I will motion blur it side to side just to give it the speed line kind of feel. And then mask out, of course, where I don't want that blur to hit, it's like from the figures backwards probably. That about wraps it up for this painting. Thank you guys so much. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.